You may have noticed how so many criminal cases are so often postponed, how many disputes that we have end up in court. But now concerns, we simply do not have enough judges. And in fact, we now have a situation where there are not enough judges to hear all of these disputes. Imagine what will happen. Disputes pile up. In fact, several important trials have already had to be postponed simply because there isn't a judge to be allocated to hear them. Mbekezeli Benjamin is from Judges Matter. Mbekezeli, good afternoon to you. Why do we have a shortage of judges? Is it because there are too many cases or because we have too few judges?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Well, the reason is simple. There's multiple factors, but the main one is that we just don't have enough judges. The number of judges has remained more or less about 250 since about 10 years ago, and our population has grown, but we haven't seen the same growth in terms of the number of judges. So we have just too few judges in our courts.
Well, I mean, it should be relatively simple then. We just need to appoint more judges. We need to get the Judicial Service Commission, we need to get the Justice Ministry, we need to get everyone together and do that. Is it that simple, or will that lead to other problems?
Well, it's a lot more complicated than that, Stephen, in the sense that when you appoint a judge to any court, first of all, they must have a courtroom available for them to do their work. They must also have an office where they can work, but they also have to have a researcher and a secretary. So it's not just one body that needs to be placed in the building, but there are several other support functions that go with it. And so that's why right now the Justice Ministry is undertaking a long-term project of rationalization. And what that means really is to right-size the judiciary. Firstly, to determine the boundaries of the courts, because as you know, apartheid had really bizarre boundaries. Like if you were in King Williamstown, you can't go to the court in Bishu, which is 5 kilometers away, but you had to go to the court in Grahamstown. So they're trying to redraw those boundaries for the courts, but at the same time, they have to determine exactly how many judges do we need in relation to the population that we have, in relation to the caseloads that we have in the different courts. So it's not a straightforward process, and it probably is a long-term process. But what we as Judges Matter are saying is that there should be short-term interventions to try and deal with the crisis, because it really is a crisis. And one of those interventions is to appoint more acting judges on a temporary basis. And what we're saying as well is for National Treasury to make money available for those acting judges to be appointed on a short-term basis.
So acting judges can help relieve some of the pressure. There can be other consequences. There was, at one time, many questions asked about a series of acting judges in the Western Cape High Court. In some cases, these were lawyers and advocates that came from other divisions, not from the Western Cape itself. In other cases, it was largely, I think, if I remember correctly, white men. And, of course, all of the people appointed to these positions temporarily won't have gone through the Public Judicial Service Commission process. So it could work. Could it also create trouble?
Yeah, look, there is a risk that there might be some problems along the line. One of which we've identified is that there is a practice which is really commendable of senior lawyers making their pro bono hours available to the judges, and those are called pro bono judges. That's a good thing, but it does run a risk of interfering with the independence of the judiciary. So we would like to see more paid acting judges to take on these positions. But even when those acting judges are appointed, we're not saying it's a free-for-all. So there should be a strict process that is where they scrutinize the applicants, make sure that they have the experience, make sure that they know the court and the court rules, and based on their professional experience, they should be able to be people of integrity who can sort of step into the court and deal with the backlog in cases. So it shouldn't really be a free-for-all. And something else that we're calling for is actually a clear policy that should be written down as to how those acting judges are appointed. But I think overall, the bigger problem is that people are not having their day in court. So there are delays in people getting their cases in court, and that is what really should be the focus at the moment. But of course, building the right safeguards at the same time.
Mbekezeli Benjamin from Judges Matter, thank you very much indeed.